A to the K.
To the K.
To the K. Welcome to the A to the K Wrestling Show for the Superstar Spotlight, all on Roman Reigns, Anthony.
Roman Reigns, the head of the table, the man with the golden glove. Now, this has been...
Does he call himself that? He should.
I don't know, but I'm going to try and make it a thing. Let's make it a thing, guys.
Okay, let's do it.
So, I've been keen to talk about this one because a lot of our superstar spotlights, and they aren't designed to be anything other than let's look at this particular wrestler. They're not going to be in favour of or anything. We're not here to be negative. But all the ones we've done have been, all three, have been reasonably safe in the sense of, like, they're very well liked. Now, Roman has got a massive fan base, don't get me wrong. Fan base. Yeah.
Roman's got we'll call him the big dog for nothing. You know what I'm saying?
But he also has a lot of controversy around him, so I thought this is going to be a really interesting one to talk about, especially because this man has hit a target today, Carl. Was it today?
It was like yesterday or day before.
He's surpassed CM Punk's notorious longest reign in WWE. He's not even in WWE because hasn't Bruno Sammartino got like 2,000 odd days or whatever? But
yeah, it's a really weird record, to be fair, isn't it? I think in other words, they just really wanted someone to beat Punk as like the most recent, long-standing reign.
It's but again, I don't want to be negative, and we'll sort of talk about Roman properly in a sec. But even that is strange because I think you shared something with me where it was like he's defended the title 16 times in his 430 odd days, whereas CM Punk had done it 100 and odd. Mm-hmm. And it's like there is a stark difference there, the same way there's a stark difference between San Martino's day and Punk's day. So, like, what does the record mean, really? Like, do defenses matter more? I don't know. Anyway, so he's hit a landmark, and I thought it's an appropriate time. Let's talk about the man, Joe Anoa'i, the head of the table, the man with the golden glove, Roman Reigns. That's right, I'm throwing it in there again. So, Carl, let's talk a little bit of history, if you will, with Roman. So he is, I suppose, what you'd call a homegrown talent with WWE. You mentioned actually very early on in the show, was it possibly the beginning of This Week in Wrestling that, yeah, it was our fun fact of the week.
It was.
Actually, that's he originally started out as a footballer. A lot of people might be surprised at that because he comes from a rich wrestling family. I don't mean rich in cash. I mean, like, there's a lot of wrestling history there.
Also, sidebar, can we call them footballers? I mean, are they just like American football players? Like, I don't think they call themselves footballers.
Oh, right, that's okay. I thought you were going to get into the whole, like, British-American debate of, like, it's not soccer.
But no, I mean, like, I don't think they call themselves footballers. Like, obviously, footballers over here do, but I think they just call themselves American football players.
Okay, so he was a football player. Carl gave a fun fact of the week. In like, again, a very interesting fun fact that he had some other careers as well, but that he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars at one point as well.
He did.
So this wasn't his chosen career, if you will, and there's maybe something to be said for that. As a lot of people like almost take umbrage to it when someone turns the hand to wrestling, even though we've seen many a person do that. I mean, like, I was going to give Kurt Angle as an example, but he was never a sports entertainer, Kurt Angle, and he ended up being one of the best. So I think that's a valid example, even though he has wrestling chops. So I don't think there's particularly an issue with that. But nevertheless, he signed with WWE's developmental territories. I find this interesting as well because he's sort of predates NXT in a way. So it was, I think, FCW as it was at the time back in 2010. Yeah. And bear in mind, this wasn't long before NXT, so he actually wrestled under the name Joe Anoa'i. And then we saw, developing. There's not a lot to be said for that. I don't think there was an option for us to follow FCW, Carl, so there's not a lot we can say about that time period.
No.
But WWE rebranded FCW to NXT. This was in 2012. Alongside that, Joe Anoa'i, as we knew him at the time, was given a new ring name and a heel character for NXT in Roman Reigns.
Was he also, I'm pretty sure he had a gimmick called Leaky or something at one point, like some kind of...
Possibly, I think, wasn't that a reference to his family in some way?
Maybe, yeah. Anyway,
But
yeah.
no, yeah, I'd say it's a little bit spotty, that sort of history, because obviously it was less accessible. NXT became a very much more accessible product for the likes of Carl and myself. We can watch it on the network and so on like that. But very short-lived, because also in 2012, not long after the rebrand, and there was some time spent in NXT. I think he notably defeated CJ Parker, but he was called up to join the Shield with Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, yeah, and himself,
Seth Rollins,
and Seth Rollins. Now, this is where the conversation starts, because obviously I don't know how you feel about the Shield, so I want to talk about that first of all, because the Shield came in, and a lot of people love the Shield. It was this badass thing. They walked in through the audience because they don't walk down ramps. Fuck you guys. And they were like these sort of rebel heel characters, and a bit of a foil for, I think it was it Punk, the initial feud with them.
Well, it's a weird one, isn't it? So I think they debuted in a triple threat match with Punk to defending the title against John Cena and Ryback, of all people. So he basically, like, the three of them came over and put Ryback through a table. That distracted Cena, and Punk ended up getting the win. So I don't know whether they actually feuded with Punk, because obviously I don't like. Yeah, they must have done. Yeah, they did.
No. I think you're right. Wasn't there like a speculative thing initially where it was like, are they working for Punk or not?
Maybe.
I know they ended up in a feud with Punk, because Punk was talking like, I infamously remember when he was sort of talking about wanting to take on the biggest guy in the Shield, and obviously put Dean Ambrose down because I beat you a bunch of times or something like that. And just trying to sort of pull them apart from the inside. So, and I know he went into a feud with them, but I think initially there was that speculation, wasn't there? It was like, was that deliberate? Do they work for Punk? That kind of thing. But like, I don't know if it was me and my sort of old man ways, but I was like, Shield, no NWO. But like, what did you make of the Shield at the time? When these characters debut, there's no denying, like, whether you like Roman or not, he was the big guy. He was the quiet one. He did everything he needed to do in the Shield, to be what he needed to be in the Shield. And I don't think you can deny he did a good job. I think the problem came later on, to be honest with you. But I mean, what did you actually make of the Shield?
I was a fan of them, to be fair. I wasn't a fan of the first incarnation of the ring gear. It just looked like they were in like they were about to go and commit a like cat burglary or something. They just had like a little, you know what I mean? Like they were just all dressed in black and stuff like that. But I liked obviously the SWAT gear, the riot gear kind of thing that they did afterwards, and it was different. It felt fresh. It wasn't like Nexus kind of fresh, but it was like, okay, these are menacing, and they can cause quite a bit of destruction. So I was a big fan. The first time I saw them, I never thought they'd go on to have the careers that they've had. I never thought they'd actually, be as successful as they were. But I thought, okay, this is interesting. I was definitely a fan of the group, of the faction.
No, I agree on a level. Like, certain things I thought were like, I don't put it. Like, I think they thought it was much cooler than it actually was, and like things like coming in through the audience, like, just seemed a little bit like, I don't know, maybe once or twice, but the fact they did it for every entrance, I was a bit like, okay, we get it, you rebels. I just felt a little bit cheesy almost, and maybe I'm just being a bit jaded on it. I don't know, but like you say, the Nexus had more impact for me, for instance. So obviously we get this insanely popular faction, regardless of what I think, they're insanely popular with the audience. People love them, and for me, and this is where I think it becomes interesting, because a lot of people feel like the golden boy was Roman, and on a level, you can agree with that. Like, they definitely saw something in him as a future champion, as the future face of the place, and that sort of thing. But arguably, Seth got the first push.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who was propelled from the Shield and put into the spotlight, and handled it really well. Like, this is where the problems kind of, and we won't go into Seth because obviously it's not about Seth, but obviously he betrayed the Shield for whatever reason. The Shield broke up after that. Like, Dean and Roman weren't exactly against each other, but that was kind of the end of the faction. And we went on to this push for Seth as like the corporate stooge. He was gifted the pedigree, if you might recall, and this left sort of Dean to find his own way and become the lunatic with a fringe, and it left Roman. Now, I think this is sort of where the problem sort of started for Roman, really, because he wasn't really a talker in the Shield. He was the big guy who did, like, he was the muscle, if you will. And he then sort of went into this ridiculous amount of, like, let's push him to the moon, but we hadn't really proved a lot yet. So we're looking at about, like, what, a couple of years after the Shield. And the Shield really didn't last as long as you might recall, because it was talking like 2014. He's going into a solo run and getting pushed as a main event guy. Now, I'll sort of gloss over, because we're not going to talk about every single controversy around them, but obviously we remember notoriously that the infamous Royal Rumble win that people just really fucking hated. But this need to, like, push him as a star at the time, when arguably, and I'd be interested in how you feel about it, but I don't think he was ready at that point. I think this was the problem, because he certainly wasn't much of a talker at that point. I don't think anyone would even argue with that. But I mean, how do you feel about his initial solo run?
I think he's just a victim of WWE. Like, they are their own, like, they are the authors of their own downfall all the time. It's like you mentioned with Mox, that I'm calling him Mox because he is Mox, but with Dean Ambrose, it was like, oh, he's the lunatic fringe, and it's like, why has everyone got to have a stupid fucking name? Why is everyone, and it was like the big dog, and eventually when you're forcing someone down your throat constantly every single week, as like, with all these little catchphrases and nicknames and stuff like that, it's so formulaic, and it's stuff that people are tired of it. It doesn't feel organic, and that's what people miss about the wrestling business. And unfortunately for Roman, he was very much a corporate stooge, because he just did whatever they wanted. You could see that all his promos are scripted, suffering succotash and all this shite. And people were just like, it wasn't getting over, because why would it? Because you didn't, for someone who was like, believe that, you don't believe a single fucking word out of his mouth. So, it's hard to get behind somebody like that. But to your point, it's like, they clearly picked, okay, he's our golden goose, so we're just going to push him to the moon. And obviously, it's so ironic, because the amount of sound bites you'll find of the likes of Stephanie McMahon or Vince McMahon going, what sets us apart is we listen to our audience. And it's like, no, you don't. You clearly don't, because you've got your own idea in your mind of what you want someone to be, and you'll push it until it works. And if it doesn't work, you probably sack them. So, it's a very, quite a bit of a rant. But, I just think he wasn't ready. He didn't have the promo chops, from a character standpoint. Similar to Big E now. I don't think Big E knows who he is. I don't think that character is his organic character. It's who he's being told to play. And I think that's what Roman was like as well. And, Roman, as we'll come on to later, I'm sure, have found something that worked for him. And I'm still confident Big E can do the same. But this wasn't working for Roman. It was literally...
Something that I've always found interesting about this period of time as well was, like, they kind of ran it backwards, because he went into a solo run. And to give you like a slight, but I don't want to be too sort of, here's a list of facts, but like, he went into a solo run, was inserted into the Money in the Bank ladder match I think it was actually for the vacant title at the time, so it wasn't actually for the Money in the Bank. But anyway, it was won by John Cena, but he was put into a title contention pretty quickly. And then the following pay-per-view, I believe it was Battleground, he again challenged for the title in a fatal four-way match. So, like, they went, you're going to be our guy, and you're going to be going for the title. All right, he didn't win, but he was put in the world title scene, right? And then, weirdly, it was after he'd already held the world title for some time and wasn't popular with it, dropped it, and, I think he might have had an injury in that time as well. But it was after that they went, well, you can be the US title holder. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, there's something to be said, and I know it doesn't always have to go this way, but where was the natural progression? Why wasn't that the first thing? You test the waters, you put him in the mid-card title scene, see how he does with it. Like, it was always weird to me that they put him in the world title scene first. I don't know why, that just doesn't sit right with me, that.
It's a great shout, to be fair, because you look at the other ones, like you look at Cena, his big moment was winning the US title, wasn't it? Beating the Big Show. Like, that was one of the big moments that made him. You look back to the IC title matches I always talk about between The Rock and Triple H early on, like even like the European strap and stuff like that Triple H had for a bit. So the feud with Owen. So you're right. Where's the natural progression gone from? To, as you said, testing the waters, seeing how they do with a title, and then slowly building them up. It's clear that they rushed it. It was too much too soon for him, I think.
Yeah, But then they weren't willing to let go. They had him in those in the title scene. 2014 goes into a solo run in the main title scene, doesn't win, but in that scene, we want to establish him as a main event guy, right? Enter 2015, enters the Royal Rumble, wins the Royal Rumble. Everyone fucking hates him, but goes on to WrestleMania. Obviously, people still fucking hate him. And then we get into that whole infamous WrestleMania match. Daniel Bryan beats Daniel Bryan, and we get the cash-in. I think it was WrestleMania 31. We get the cash-in from Seth Rollins to save the fucking day because everyone hated the fucking win, right? But they weren't put off, and I'm not blaming Roman for this, they just weren't put off by the crowd not getting behind. They were portraying him as a face, and the crowd just weren't getting behind him. And I think this is where we'll talk about it later, but he would have worked better as a heel as well. Like, he wasn't fully fleshed out, but just go with what the crowd are feeling. The crowd are hating him, so make him that entitled heel then. Do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it was so refreshing, the latest feud between him and Brock, because the previous two Mania matches that the pair of them had was obviously first you had Seth come down and cash in. That saved the day because the fans had fucking turned on that straight away because they weren't happy, and they didn't learn from that because they did the same bloody thing again at WrestleMania a couple of years later, and then they changed their mind last minute because the fans were shitting on them and had Brock win, and that's what led to the famous thing in gorilla position where Brock launches the title at Vince's head, and Vince is like fuming. So
yeah, because I think Brock was ready to go at that point. He was ready to drop the title, wasn't he, at that point?
Yeah.
And but yeah, so like they spent just way too much of a time just like trying to get him to be that main event guy, and just to skip forward because obviously we have a fair bit of that, but some of the slight saving grace, I don't know how you feel about it. They obviously went into his US title run, as I mentioned. This was after already holding the world title, which was a bit weird. But we also went into this reunion of the Shield. So this is like, let's say, put us about 2016 now. We get the Shield reuniting, which, again, people were all over. For me, personally, I'm like, well, have they even been split up that long? But, it was years. I don't know, it just didn't feel that long because I'm old. But again, I think this was probably a good thing for Roman at the time because the crowd still weren't behind him really, but they loved the Shield, so it kind of makes sense. But what I mean, you were a fan of the Shield. Did you enjoy the Shield reunion? When obviously at this point Dean Ambrose is a much more established character, and whether you like him or hate the Lunatic Fringe, he had his fan base and he was more fleshed out. Seth Rollins was full on Seth Rollins at this point, so people either loved him or hated him, and Roman was, he was there.
Yeah, it didn't land for me. I wasn't a big fan of it, to be fair. I don't see why they needed to do it. And it didn't really last that long anyway, because I can't remember exactly what happened. I don't know whether
I can't remember whether it was Dean or Seth. No, it was Dean, wasn't it? Because he come back with his haircuts and everything. I think Dean actually was injured out, and that's why they couldn't continue with the reunion.
Yeah, like I'm sure. Yeah, so someone was definitely injured, weren't they? So it felt a bit like, oh, well, we tried that and that didn't work. But yeah, I don't get why they did it. Like, to your point, they were broken up for a little bit, but it wasn't like, D-Generation X have reunited after these. It was just like, oh yeah, these guys are now the Shield again, and like they reverted back to all their old stuff, even though like most of them had grown significantly in that amount of time. So I think to your point, it was done almost as a crutch for Roman. It's like, fans liked him when he was in the Shield. Let's put him back on the Shield then and see whether that works. Because at this point, they would literally try anything. I think he had an Intercontinental title reign at one point during this as well, which is so unmemorable. And obviously, you know what my thoughts about the IC title. So that says everything you need to know in terms of the title and giving it to Roman at that point in time, because I don't even hardly remember him having it. So yeah, I think as well, just before, like, I know obviously we're going to move on from this and stuff like that, but something we didn't cover, which is of particular interest to me because I know how much of a fan you are. What did you make of all the stuff with The Undertaker? Because I don't think that helped him at all, to be fair, to get over it as a face.
I honestly don't. I don't get it. Like, because this was something that happened, like, I assume when you say the stuff with The Undertaker, I know he had a level of feud with him, but he sort of won the title of the big dog and this was my yard now, but are we talking particularly the feud between the two or the actual loss at WrestleMania?
So sort of both. It was two things. So he's the second guy to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, but he was also the whole, this is my yard now.
Like, I think it was I don't think it landed, but it was an admirable try to say this is my yard now. And again, that should have been a Healy thing, and I think they were still trying to push him as a good guy, which is weird.
That's the crazy thing for me, because if they would have gone full in on it and made him a horrible heel, that was a great way to do it. But the fact he tried to still keep him as a face,
yeah. But I couldn't get my head around the loss at WrestleMania, because it's like, that would have been people. Don't be wrong, it would have been polarizing as fuck. But it would have made more sense if they'd tried to have him end the streak.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's like, well, the streak's ended, so, he can take losses now, just felt really kind of odd.
Yeah.
Okay. And bear in mind, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the streak ended the following year. He went up against Bray Wyatt and won. Mm-hmm. And then the following year, Roman Reigns beat him. So it's not even like he took 2 consecutive losses either.
No.
I honestly don't. The win at WrestleMania puzzles me more than anything, because it's like that had a lot less impact now. As I say, I wasn't a big fan of it. It's my yard now stuff, but I kind of get what they were trying to do. Would have actually been very effective had he have decided to be a bad guy as well.
Yeah, I think I'd like to touch on this again when we get to current Roman Reigns.
That's fine. So we'll sort of speed over to that then. So obviously we had Roman sort of. I'm going to gloss as quickly as I can, but basically we had the Roman we know until we get to, sadly, 2019 during the pandemic. Now things were a bit shaky for Roman during the pandemic anyway, with his sort of situation. Like, well, we'll go into it. Basically, we had Roman sort of announcing on an episode of Raw that he had previously suffered leukemia and was suffering with leukemia. Obviously it was totally true, so like it's not a promo, but it was a very impassioned speech. He dropped the Roman Reigns gimmick and was Joe Anoa'i, and he suffers with he has leukemia and he needed to go away for some time and he needed to deal with that. I thought he handled it really well. I mean, that was something that's so difficult to talk to people about. Never mind like thousands, like 20,000+ people or whatever is in the audience at the time, and he handled it so strong, in like the sense of like he's gonna go, he's gonna kick its ass, and he's gonna be back. And that was the first. And I know it's not like, I don't want to refer to it as like a promo. I'm trying to massively to avoid that because it's a shit situation. But that was, to me, the first time you got to see a non-scripted real person, and that was impassioned, and that was like, obviously we wanted him to get better and we wanted him to come back, and like, I don't know, there's just that it was so emotional at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think in a weird way, and this is what I'm trying to avoid it because I know it wasn't done deliberately, I know it wasn't a promo, but in a weird way, that made his return so much better.
Yeah.
And then it helped us sort of build that love for Roman, because we were so happy to see him back, and that he's done it. He's kicked its ass and he's come back like he said he would. So we'll get to that point. He obviously had to relinquish the title. We then had him again, because we're not trying to talk about other people. So he doesn't have the title. He's gone away. Comes back in 2019. Surprises us all. Now, how did you feel about his return, Carl? Because again, it led to what he is now, but this was at the detriment of The Fiend.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the subject matter certainly helps, because it's so, like it's such a devastating thing. But that promo really he really endeared himself to the fans, I think. And to your point, when he came back and he was like, I'm in remission and all that, he did that promo. That was like, straight away, that was the biggest face pop he's ever had, wasn't it? Let's be fair. With all that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think in terms of returns, that was definitely getting him on the face track.
Yeah, I'll apologise because I have cannibalised that a little bit. We knew that he was in remission before he sort of retained, but then sort of didn't. So I'm sort of glossing over a few bits because I want to get to the main point of him becoming what he is now. So I'll gloss over that point a little bit, but I'll sort of stress that the reason he was absent for so long was more due to the having to protect himself, understandably, because of the coronavirus. So it wasn't actually because of the leukemia. So I'll just make that a little bit clearer. But obviously we had him out for some time. He was scheduled to face Goldberg. Yeah. And people were loving it. Oh, spear versus spear, it was going to be great, and naturally we didn't get that. But we got this unusual setup of Goldberg versus Braun. So weirdly, Roman having to have some time out to be cautious led to Braun getting a push. But as I sort of briefly mentioned before, when he returned, when it was safe to return, this was to the detriment of the Fiend.
Yeah, it was.
People were massive on the Fiend, and I actually thought this was not going to be good for him. But he did the right thing, because we move into then essentially the head of the table after this.
Yeah, but I don't think from my point of view, when he came back, I had no idea it was going to lead to what it's become today. Like, I remember us joking, I just couldn't get over his teeth. And like that was it. It was like, he's had his teeth done, whatever. He's still going to be the same old Roman Reigns. We're not really going to see a whole world of difference with him. But how wrong we were, I guess, because as you say that, they certainly got it on the right track finally, I think.
No, definitely. I mean, I think on top of that, and he was never out of shape, so I'm not like having an issue with this when I say it, but like this guy had clearly been working his ass off while he was away. He was ripped. His teeth were bigger than ever. He's come back as a whole new man. You know what I mean? But what I found sort of interesting is, and this is where I think a lot of the talking will come in, because it's the bit I really enjoy about Roman. He come back and he aligned himself with Paul Heyman, who was sort of at a loss. It was a bit weird time for Paul actually at this point, because he was no longer the advocate for Brock Lesnar, who wasn't with the company at the time. He was I can't remember if he was running Raw or SmackDown, and then removed from that position. Like,
it was Raw, I think,
in the background. So a lot of stuff had gone on there, that he was still going to be an on-screen talent, but he wasn't going to be involved in the creative decisions anymore. And you were like, what is going on for Paul? But then he comes back as like, I don't even know what you'd class him as for Roman, because what I always thought was surprising is I never really classed Roman as much of a talker, as I think you did the same. And he wasn't really. I mean, we all remember infamously the whole Suffer and Succotash promo with Big Show and stuff like that. It's like, he wasn't great, but he was following a script, as you say.
Yeah.
And I was expecting, well, this is the right thing. He's come back. He's clearly come back as a heel, and Paul Heyman is going to speak for the man. But that hasn't really been true.
No.
He's done his own talk. Like, Paul Heyman's, he's cut some awesome promos, and he's put Roman across fantastically. He's been massively involved in this Brock storyline, which we'll get to. But Roman has really proved since he's returned that you let him have the mic, and you let him. I don't know if he's gone away and worked on it, or whether it is literally just that he's gone, well, I'll just shoot from the hip and I won't rely on a script. But he's able to just he's put himself across fantastically, and I would say he's definitely found who he is as a wrestler at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's worth noting in this time that he was away, he did have a little bit of movie experience. I think he worked on something with The Rock.
He's on. Didn't he appear in Fast and the Furious as well?
I think it was, yeah. So I think it was him and The Rock. Must have been.
I'm trying to desperately remember what film I saw him in that I was surprised to see him in. I feel like it was an Adam Sandler film, and he was randomly in it as well.
He was in something on Netflix, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, he also did some stuff with The Rock, so maybe he kind of cut his teeth in the acting world a little bit, which helped him. But the thing that's fascinating about him is he came back, and obviously he had, what was it, Wreck Everyone and Leave?
Yes.
That was his first thing, wasn't it? And it was like, right, okay. And then it was show up and win after his first match. And they were these it was, the big dog and all that kind of stuff wasn't really there anymore. And it was kind of like, okay, maybe they're moving away from this. But then but a lot more organically, he started to create these, like, acknowledge me and head of the table. And they feel more organic nicknames. So they still got him. But it's not like lunatic fringe and the big dog and stuff that Michael Cole just is clearly told to say as much as he can.
Yeah,
it's almost
like when they go, "We're going to call Lars the Freak," okay? So I want you to say that 100 times, Michael. Okay.
Exactly. Whereas these felt more like, okay, he's doing stuff with the Usos and he's talking about how he's the one in charge. He's the head of the table. Makes sense. Fucking brilliant, right?
I think this is what really surprised me as well, because like one of the first sort of thing, obviously after he comes back and he has the whole interaction with Braun and Bray. Really speaking, his first feud after that is with Jey Uso, who's not willing to acknowledge him.
Yeah.
And like that's where a lot of it, like you say, this acknowledge me and the head of the table stuff, this was born in that feud. And who'd have thought him having a feud with Jey Uso will be one of the best things of that time? Because that was a really good feud between the two.
Yeah. No, it really was. I think when Jimmy was injured, I think a lot of us thought like, oh, well, that's Jey off telly then, because they're not going to make him a singles star. Do you know what I mean? And to be fair to the guy, he did a great job.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I've got nothing but good things to say about Jey and the work he did over that time. But it was just so organic that I think that's what's helped Roman be that breakout character that he's always wanted to be. Obviously, he's doing the talking, as you said, and he's improved at that. He's got a heel persona, which is something we've never seen before, so that feels fresh. But then the fact it's been a family kind of thing and stuff has really worked well. I think they've done so well with it.
And what I find interesting as well is, in a way, the years of being sort of pushed and the crowd hating him have sort of fed into the whole reason he's a heel. And like, I don't know, there's like an added little bit to like, I can totally understand why he's angry towards the audience in a way. So when he's there, like, acknowledge me, and he's a bad guy, and you go, well, yeah, I get it, because he's like spent years like winning the accolades, you know, grabbing the brass ring, if you will, and no one's willing to say like he was like, even us up to this point have been going, yeah, it just wasn't working, and the crowd didn't like him, and wasn't ready, like weirdly that's built into this whole gimmick that he's got now. Like, you can totally understand how he's got there, because they've done nothing but dislike him. And I think oddly, if we hadn't had that, like, it wouldn't have really fed into this story now, in a way. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not saying this was long-term storytelling by any means, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh no, this is fucking fluky shit that managed to line up finally after so many attempts. But I think as well, you know, wrestling fans over the years, they've grown to really just not like baby faces. To be fair, and I think this is why Big E gets a lot of credit, because in a world where people prefer to cheer the heels these days, you know, Big E is getting the reaction, and he is a babyface. So it's kind of like, which, to be fair play, you know, he gets some credit for that. But the fact is, Roman, they spent so long trying to get Roman over and liked by the fans as a babyface, it never worked. The minute you turn him heel, they fucking love him.
Well, I think it's always kind of been that way. If you look at like John Cena started out as a heel and people loved him, and then he turned him face, and it seems to be like a natural path you have to kind of go down. Look at Eddie Guerrero; he was a bad guy, but then he was still a bad guy face. You know, he was blatantly I lie, I cheat, I steal, but we fucking loved him. Like, he went from heel to face without ever changing his gimmick, which is impressive in itself. So, like, I don't know, it's funny that they didn't really, and I'm not trying to sound like a smart here, like, oh, did they not know? But it's funny that they didn't try the heel thing sooner.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we got all the way to 2020. Like, he started on the main roster in 2012. I got all the way to 2020 before they tried turning them heel.
Yeah, I think they've only just wised up to the fact. So it's the same as, I mean, I don't think Cena ever wanted to turn heel, but the fact is, he prints money. He has a different coloured T-shirt, you know, looks like a big box of Fruity Pebbles, as The Rock would say, different thing on it every week, and he sells shitloads of them, right? And Roman was selling, you know, the stuff with the R's on, or like the little Superman thing, or like whatever it was. Like, kids love it, you know, it's a wholesome thing, he's a good guy, whatever. He's a merch machine. But WWE used to panic, going like, oh, well, if we turned him heel, then we're not going to sell any T-shirts anymore. But what they finally wised up to is that if your heel doesn't come across as like an idiot, cartoonish with like these stupid names, and it's actually stuff that is actually quite cool, you'll still sell them because people will like them, and ultimately they'll buy stuff.
I would actually be super curious to know how many like Tribal Chief or Acknowledge Me or Wreck Everyone and Leave shirts have sold compared to his old merch, because like I would buy those shirts now. So they've got the casual audience, they've got the younger audience who still love Roman, but they've got us who are like, the fuck's this guy? Like they've got us now like, yeah, I would wear one of them.
Yeah.
So I would argue, hopefully the merch sales have actually improved on the back of that.
It's interesting though. Sorry, like
no.
you've just said one then that we didn't even mention, which is Tribal Chief. Another one I'm thinking of now is the Bloodline. I'm curious to know, over the last year of dominance that he's had, or 436 days or whatever it's been now. I'm curious to know how many different like catchphrases or like little gimmicks or whatever he's had, because he still managed to keep it somewhat fresh. But then, as we're talking about it, it's like, well, he has tweaked it quite a bit. So it started off as like Wreck Everyone and Leave, then it was Show Up and Win, and then it was Acknowledge Me and the Tribal Chief and, you know, Head of the Table, and now it's fucking the Bloodline. And it's like, that's 6 already. So it's kind of like...
It's a fair point.
You know, he has kept himself fresh, even though, like, we joke saying, oh, okay, standard SmackDown formula, Roman's going to open the show, do a promo for a bit. And it's like, it's surprising that he is still so fresh after this amount of time. But
it's funny though, you know, because as much as I always went, oh, standard SmackDown show, Roman opens the show, I never actually had an issue with Roman's promos.
No.
It was the fact that it was always so formulaic, like, well, this is the time when Roman comes out. I never actually had an issue with what Roman was doing, which was weird.
No.
Like, it was just the fact that you knew when it was going to happen.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is that. I think, though, so how much more longevity do you think it has?
Honestly, I might have had a different opinion before the Brock Lesnar stuff. So, if you look at what he racked up in that time, like he went up against Jay. He had a feud with Jay. Jimmy returns. He sort of does the same thing with Jimmy briefly. We get all the stuff with Edge. We get the stuff with Daniel Bryan. Apologies if I missed anyone out there, but we get them too, certainly. We get... Did he actually... Was it just... Like, I know he went up against Mysterio in quite a decisive fashion. Did he actually go up against Cesaro, or did Cesaro never get past Rollins? Because it felt like he was going to get a push, but I don't think he ever actually went up against Roman.
I can't remember. You know, I think he might have actually had one match.
Yeah.
And then that was it.
Like, didn't he end that? Yeah. Anyway, that was rather brief. But we then, obviously, we went into this big sort of thing with Cena came back. Cena's going to have some time, and we're going to have a feud with Cena. We got... I actually really love the stuff with Cena, like the nods back to like when Cena cut that brutal promo on him going, oh, you're going to have to learn this stuff, kid, if you're going to be the face of the business and stuff. And then, you know, Roman's work this time around was sort of alluding back to those days. And I thought the whole missionary thing was funny as fuck, because like it you know, Cena was very much the sort of like that almost boring elements of like formulaic WWE at that point, and the fact that Roman was sort of ribbing him. They both, like, it was a massive interesting contrast. Like the last time those two sort of went up against each other on the mic, Cena was definitely
he obliterated him, didn't he? You can see the growth.
And this time the back and forth between them was amazing. And who won, really? Do you know what I mean? So we had the ace little feud between them two. Obviously we saw the end of that, and we saw him then basically, I think the next one actually was Brock returns.
I think
jump over the... Go on.
Kevin Owens is in there at some point. So I just had a flashback to that terrible handcuff spot.
Ah, you're right. Kevin Owens was actually probably right after Jimmy and Jay, you know.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
Sorry for blocking that out.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, I forgot about it as well.
Yeah. But obviously we then had Brock Lesnar rocking back up. We did have that whole stuff with Finn Balor in the mix. That's probably the only thing I've not been a fan of in recent years. That it's like,
same.
We all want the match between him and Brock, but we're gonna have Finn Balor as well. Like, Finn Balor was never gonna win because we already knew we were getting Brock. But fact remains, when we talk about how long is it gonna last, keeping it fresh, look at what we've got now. Like, it's nothing like what we had. He's still the tribal chief. He's still got the bloodline stuff going on. He's still, you know, he's not changed a great deal as a character, which isn't a bad thing. But we've now got this turmoil for Paul Heyman because he's like, who's his allegiance to? And we got all of that going forward, and that was ace as well, and we thoroughly enjoyed that. So, like, I don't know what in terms of going forward, like where we're going to go with it, or how long it could last, but For me, I'm like, surely at some point we've got to give everyone what they wanted, and we've got to have him go up against The Rock. He is the head of the table, and The Rock is like his family. And who's going to challenge the head of the table? Who better to challenge the head of the table when you look at the bloodline and the family stuff than The Rock? So surely that's going to happen.
So I mean, the most immediate. So he's going to go up against Big E in the Survivor Series. Obviously, different.
Of course, champion versus champion. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll happen. Which will take
I'm actually not that fussed about that. Like,
no,
I'd be interested. I think the natural result would be to put Reigns over. And
it'd have to be. You couldn't have Big E beat Reigns, Jesus.
It probably would be actually almost damaging to Reigns to give Big E the win at this point. For the length of reign he has had. So yeah, I'm not overly fussed on that, but it seems we're definitely going to get a return with him and Brock.
Well, yeah, I mean it's clear that isn't finished, so I don't know when that's going to be. So I'm just thinking.
No, they've not really been clear on that yet.
No, so he's got Big E, hasn't he? And then after that, so you're going to have Day 1 and the Royal Rumble of the next two. So that's going to be kind of what sets up the WrestleMania card. So will he get Drew at the Rumble and beat Drew, leading to Brock again at WrestleMania for God knows how many times? Will he get Brock at the Rumble, and then that could potentially lead to Drew or even a triple threat between them for Mania? So obviously WrestleMania 22 takes place in Texas. So next year's Mania is Texas. The one after that is Hollywood. So that's the one that makes me think that's like where, imagine that. Imagine if that was your main event for WrestleMania Hollywood. A Roman Reigns who is being reborn, as long as they don't kill him over the next year.
I can't see it, because I still, and I don't know how you get there. It's impossible to move over brands. Sorry, I'm arguing myself here. I don't know how you get there, but I still think there's legs in a feud between him and Seth. So I've got to continue with him and Brock. We've got him and Seth, him and Drew. All things that could happen during that time. So I'm not worried about them killing him, because I think there's plenty of good feuds there, which is unusual to say with WWE.
Is he going to drop it though? It's a hell of a long time.
That's the thing. Like, part of me kind of wants to see him never drop it, and then you go, well, he's not going to drop it to The Rock, surely. So I just don't know. I really don't know.
Because part of me thinks, will they do something like have Drew beat him or something? I don't think that'd go down well at the minute with Drew, unfortunately.
For me, that would have been a great thing at one point, but like you say, like, our personal opinions aside, the crowd don't seem to be behind Drew at the minute, so you're quite right.
It's almost, which is why, obviously, when we did the tier list, this is why Roman was in the S tier, because you look at the rosters now and you go, who can believably beat Roman Reigns?
That's the thing.
Who's going to be the one?
Very few. And honestly, that's kind of why you look at it and go, well, Brock has to be in the picture, because he is, not that he was going to beat him, because like I think they made the right choice having him retain, but someone in Brock's caliber, you go, well, he stands a chance of.
Oh yeah,
this can happen. What I don't want, and I think he might have some more matches with WWE before his contract expires, I honestly don't want Goldberg and Reigns. I don't want the return of Spear versus Spear. I don't care.
No, me neither. To be quite honest with you, it would have been okay at the time, but now, like, Roman Reigns wasn't the character he is now. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's exactly. He's a level above now. So, I honestly don't know. I think you're absolutely right to call out Seth. That writes itself. There's so much history there. I could see that being like a massive build up into like SummerSlam of next year kind of time. To be fair, because obviously they're on different brands, they're keeping them separated at the minute. That's got to be the end game of bringing them back. There's your big feud of the summer next year, and then you've got to be going towards Roman and Rock at Mania. It's got to be.
To my mind, that's what you've got to do. Surely.
If you don't if you don't do that, my God! Like, and I know the Rock's got a busy schedule, but surely, if he's even remotely wanting to give back to the business, this is the biggest thing he could do. He's done, obviously Cena and Rock,
honestly,
which was huge.
This might be a wild thing to say, but this would be up there with Rock Hogan.
It's not far off. I mean, the fact that they're related and stuff as well, and it is literally like, The Rock, however many years ago. It's such from like a lore standpoint. It's like this means something.
It's like a history books kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So like I think obviously with it being in Hollywood as well, and The Rock being the biggest star in Hollywood, like they would print money. If they would fucking print money, and it would elevate Roman to that next level again, by having that match.
And of course, in this time before we get to WrestleMania Hollywood, we're gonna have Tama Tonga rock up on WWE and fulfill the destiny that I've written many a time.
Yeah, we know how that works out. We're still waiting for Keith Lee versus Brock. Oh wait, that's not going to happen now.
Actually, yeah, maybe Tama's better not involved. I don't know.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it does beg the question, doesn't it? So obviously, who else can fill them gaps? You've got Big E in the immediate future. You've got to have Drew in there. You've got to have Seth in there. Who else? Who else in that time frame? I
do struggle after those few in my head. I mean, Edge is still knocking around, but we don't need that again, really.
No. A wild one I might throw, into the arena for next year. Damian Priest.
I don't disagree. I think he's definitely got the momentum and potential. Assuming WWE don't sort of affect that in some way. Like, he's been absolutely killing it on the main roster, which is unusual. Not anything against him, but obviously we've seen a lot of NXT talent come up and ultimately get released. It's actually become a joke now that it's like the career mode is. I think you sent me it as well, where the career mode is like come in NXT, become NXT champion, hit the main roster, get released.
Yeah, but it's so true though, isn't it? And I think for Damian Priest, he's probably been better on the main roster than he was in NXT. I think
totally I've enjoyed him more than I ever did on NXT.
I remember you and me just got when he won the North American title and he was sat in the jacuzzi with the women, and we were like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" But yeah, he's been a lot better. So. Yeah, I don't expect him to beat Roman either, but I could see him as like a fresh contender for him. And it is about, at this point, as sad as it is to say, and whether or not he does lose the belt to someone like Drew or Brock in that time frame, he'll definitely win it back. The only thing that makes sense is to go to April 2023 with Roman versus The Rock.
Yeah.
That's the end game. So
that has to happen, surely. I like to think that that's their long-term plan here. Mm-hmm. Because surely you've got to have that happen. You've got to meet face to face.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like overall, because that's a brief run through of Roman Reigns in a spotlight, right? But like we've talked briefly about his build up and the fact he wasn't well liked and how he's killing it now. So just like a couple of bits I wanted to talk about, sort of in summary before we close off, is. Can you think of another scenario where someone has been so sort of disliked for so long, but had so many accolades? Like before he was ever over, arguably, he had so many accolades against it. He's multi-time world champion, US champion. I think he held the tag belts at one point. And that was all before he was ever actually really that popular with the crowd. Can you think of another scenario where that's actually happened, other than Lex Luger?
I mean, yeah, Luger's a prime example, to be fair. But he never got over with the crowd, so you can't really use him. Honestly, no. I'm trying to think of the people that tried to force down your throats, but.
And I am being generally. I know there's some people will be like, "Well, I liked him back in the day," and you can, but that I'm talking about the general crowd, and he was never really massively popular with the audience.
No,
you just go off the booze. You know what I mean? It's only recent years that we've not really had.
I mean, you mentioned it that Royal Rumble finish. You could clearly see then when he was obviously the big face of the company, where everybody is booing him, and even The Rock's going, "What the fuck is going on?"
Well, that's the thing. I think there's that infamous bit where The Rock comes out to help him, like, "Hey, look, he's won," and I think it's been that long since The Rock's been booed. That truly did puzzle the fuck out of him.
Yeah, you could see it was all over his face. He's like,
"Yeah,
what?"
I don't know how to react to this.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I honestly don't know. But what you have just reminded me of before you move on to the other thing you wanted to speak about was, I said before I wanted to revisit The Undertaker just very briefly, in the sense of how much better would it have been if this Roman Reigns ended the streak?
Yeah. Honestly, like that, if they'd have managed to establish Roman Reigns to what he is now, and he ended the streak, that just would have been another thing of acknowledge me. That would have just been perfect.
That would have been absolutely nuclear, because I think like even me, when we had Taker versus Brock, it just was so last minute thrown together. Like, it was no build up to it at all, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is just another Taker win. I thought nothing of it. At least when we had Shawn Michaels and Triple H, I was like, oh okay, oh imagine. I'm still thinking in the back of my mind it wouldn't happen. This one, I didn't even give it a second thought. I was like, oh yeah, this is just a throwaway.
I think that's the shock I'll give it. It stunned everyone. I remember it was weird because we were stunned, but WrestleMania stopped for like a minute.
Yeah,
when everyone was like, "Did that just happen?" Like that, it was a shock.
It's probably the only time where an entire electric crowd has just gone. Oh.
Yeah, and it was just.
No one said anything. It was just open mouth.
No one's watching this and seeing our gestures. They've just heard us make some big noises.
So I don't want to go into it too much because I believe we might end up talking about the streak at some point soon on a future episode or whatever. So thanks to the Instagram fam who voted to let us know which upcoming episodes. But so I didn't want to go into too much. But I just setting the scene.
I don't want to end on any negativity, but I do want to talk about, like, because there are a couple of things we still joke about. They're by no means character breaking or make you dislike Roman, but there's still a couple of bits that we're not big fans on. So I just want to talk about these. Carl, do you want to sort of discuss things that you still think we could do with changing? And I'll go to your favourite one of the Golden Glove being an example, which still seems a bit hokey.
I think it's ridiculous, yeah. It's you've got a proper serious heel character with a bright golden glove. And again, he's like, everything I touch turns to gold. Well, exactly. And it's like, it just looks fucking stupid. It really does. It belittles the character.
I'm made up he doesn't punch a pillow anymore, though.
Well, yeah, there is that. He still does this fucking, like, I'm jerking me wrist off because I'm going to hit a Superman punch. I actually think the Superman punch sucks.
He'd sell me on that, right, if he had a handful of confetti and just ended it with...
Pew! But, like, legit, the Superman punch sucks. It is awful. It is one of the I think I've said before, it works for Orange Cassidy, but we're not saying Orange Cassidy and Roman Reigns on the same level here.
No,
so.
Well, it's the thing that it works on Orange Cassidy because of the Orange Cassidy's whole gimmick. I don't mind the spear. I don't think the spear should be a finisher, right? I don't mind the spear. Yeah. Sorry, Edge. Right? Yeah, I know you're going to disagree with me, Carl. We can argue about that another time.
Well, no, okay.
I do think Roman is missing like a devastating finisher.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, slam or something. I do like the inclusion. He does that submission now.
The guillotine now, doesn't he? Yeah, which he needed, I think.
But
definitely. Absolutely, the Superman punch needs to be replaced with something else because it's so hokey.
Agreed.
So the glove is hokey.
Kind of becomes synonymous with him. So I think it's always going to be in his repertoire. I just don't think he should be a finisher.
The thing is, though, like the Superman punch was synonymous with him when he was a face character. Like it just doesn't work as a heel. So some stuff you just let go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of the Golden Glove. I'm not a fan of his stupid fucking graphics. I hate them.
This isn't even a Roman thing. They need to drop those big animated fucking things.
Yeah, but like literally a big dog or literally a 3D thing of Roman going, which is another thing I don't like. Hoorah! Or whatever it is. Too. That's awful. So it's mad, really, because imagine how good he could be.
Great when Brock was mocking him, though. That was.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic. But like, imagine how good he could be if he just dropped some of them bits as well. Like Jesus.
And these, as I say, these aren't deal breaking, and I don't want to be like end on a negative note. It's just for me there are still elements that it'd be nice if we got some changes to that. And the other stuff is like cosmetic stuff, but like I think the big one that you've pointed out there is the finisher. I think if we got something to replace the Superman punch, I think that would finish him off as a heel. I think that like something that just seems like, you know, because it's let's face it, Superman punch. It's no curb stomp. It's no RKO. It's no Claymore. It's just. It needs something with a bit more.
Well, that's it. He's missing, and I know like the spear to a degree, but I kind of agree with you in that sense. Like I agree and I disagree. I think it is a finish, but I feel like when you're going up against something like an RKO or a Claymore, which can just be hit out of nowhere, the spear's less impressive. So if Roman had that, would be good. But I think for me, the ultimate question that I'd like to pose, whether it is the final question of the segment or not, is
we will make it one, yeah.
How much longer can he keep this up for? Like, because
how long will Roman reign?
How long will Roman reign? Because legit, it's 436 days, 437 days, depending on whenever you're watching this, that he's been the Universal Champion for. We said he's managed to keep it fresh up until now. He's managed to tweak it all slightly, probably sell a lot of merch and stuff in the process as well. I don't think he's definitely not stale yet, but we're talking a long time between now and WrestleMania 2023. So
we need to get him there. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. Is he going to remain champ for that whole time? If he takes a loss, how's that going to impact him? What's he go next? So yeah, there's a lot of questions.
And I know it'd be very difficult to pull off without it feeling stale, but I think they've done a fantastic job so far. I kind of want him to stay champ that entire time. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, it would definitely be a hell of a feat if he does. We're talking like Hogan and San Martino territory of like nearly 1,000, 2,000 days for San Martino, obviously. Yeah. But
let's face it, if he broke 1,000, though, that would be, especially in today's wrestling, that would be impressive.
Oh God, yeah,
a great accolade to put on his record, especially if he can do it without us going, Jesus, just lose the belt already.
Well, yeah,
we are a fickle bunch, so
that's the ultimate challenge, isn't it? How do you keep him relevant for the amount of time you need him to be relevant to have that main event?
Yeah. Because I honestly thought he might lose it, but get screwed out. Screwed out? That's not the right term. Screwed over. So they give it legitimately all right, he didn't lose it, and then we go back into some sort of feud to get it back. But again, I'm kind of all for him keeping it.
Even that, from a dynamic standpoint, if he gets screwed over, does that make him face? We don't want to see him face. He's not a good face.
We don't, yeah, because you can't be a heel, and because he's been the one who's because sorry, this is something we should have talked about, and it's just come to my mind. I love the fact that even the people who hate Roman at the minute are like, oh, he just relies on his cousins, he doesn't win legitimately. I love the fact that he does that. He's one of them. I love it when you get characters like this, almost. And I'm sorry for the comparison, Carl, because you will argue that the Mike skills are different levels, almost similar to MJF, where he can go in the ring, but he doesn't because why should he have to? So Roman legitimately could win and could squash these people, and may have won without the assistance. But why take the risk? And I like that as part of the whole heel character. And I love that people get wound up about that. It's brilliant.
There's things as well, what he's done really well. He's shown that vulnerability. He's, where he has tapped and stuff, hasn't he? Obviously...
Well, he actually lost to Brock, but there was no ref.
Exactly. So it's stuff like that where it's
five count,
and you need that, because he's not this super dominant person who oh God, he's like Superman, whatever, like they've done with Cena and a little bit with Drew McIntyre. He's shown that actually fucking hell he could have been beat there, but because he's a chick, he's got these people around him. He's a heel. He's allowed to show that vulnerability, isn't he? So
it's funny though because they've shown a bit of both, because they've made it very clear that Brock had him. Right, and like you say, I can't remember who tapped him out now, but they made it very clear that he tapped. Was it Edge? Who tapped him out?
Maybe. Yeah, it was Edge, I think.
Anyway, yeah. But at the same time, they also showed when he showed that level of dominance where he pinned both Edge and Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
One on top of the other. Just to be yeah, I'm in charge here. So they've made him look dominant as fuck, but also, like you say, he could take a loss.
Yeah.
It's been handled so well. You just wonder how can they fuck up things around them.
That's it.
They clearly have some creative ability with this. How can you not do that across the whole show?
That's what's so scary. Is is that question? How much longer can they keep it going? Because this is the only thing that is, stellar in WWE at the moment. So. Yeah,
there's just one writer flying by the seat of his pants, I don't know where to take this, but I've had nothing but success so far. I'm terrified.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, what a segment! I enjoyed that.
And me too. I'm hoping it's been enjoyable for those listening. Obviously, we briefly went over his career, and I know it started it's hard not to talk about the negativity. And as I say, this has been a unique spotlight in that sense, because it isn't all wasn't that great when but. He's been a very interesting one to talk about, because he's been probably the biggest change in terms of reception of a character that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I think for someone who was so polarizing to now gain, a clear majority of people who he's one of their favorites at the moment is no small feat. So,
indeed. So we hope you enjoyed. We'll be back with another. We'll probably have to do a female wrestler at some point with these spotlights.
Well, we did Mickie James. I might not know how many titles she won, but I know we did a segment on it.
I'm thinking to keep the balances, maybe we'll go on to another, because Mickie James has had some time in WWE, but maybe we look at a current WWE female for the next one. I think it'd be interesting. Just keep the balances a little bit.
Yeah, maybe even someone like Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker, bring it AEW level. Who knows?
Well, actually, I don't think we've done an AEW female yet, so that might be a good show.
There you go. Yeah,
maybe my vote's for Thunder Rosa.
Maybe we'll throw it over to the fans because they've been so good to us so far in helping us pick the segments they want to see. So, yeah, another fun-filled week. Great spotlight. Kudos to Anthony here for bringing this segment this week. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed it. As always, make sure you follow us. We're all elite this week on Instagram with 1,337 followers. That's now continuing to grow. TikTok growing as well. So join
we can't thank you enough, guys.
Party. Yeah, we appreciate it. And if you don't, just head over. It's that easy. Hit a little like. But yeah, if you're watching this, as we always say, next time you're in your car, next time you don't have access to a screen, we are available in an audio medium. And if you're listening to this, come and check out our beautiful faces on YouTube, because why wouldn't you want to do that?
While you're on YouTube, have your own little super click.
Hey!
Press that like button.
Let's make it a super click party. But we still, as is tradition, we're not going to tell you to press the notification bell. Who wants to be notified? Just check us out when you go on YouTube if you see us. That's all we want.
Exactly.
But yeah, until next week, thanks guys, and we will throw it over to the wonderful Georgia Smith to say goodbye. Take it easy.
Take it easy.
Hey guys, it's Georgia Smith here, and you've heard me on A2theK. These guys are awesome. Check it out. A2theK.
A2theK.